Okay, hello everyone. Thanks so much. That was a wonderful introduction. You've also stolen one of my slides, so I'm happy to I'm happy to have one less now. I have a master's in the green economy, which is a science master's, and I have a master's in the economics of sustainability. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been looking at our economic system to see how we can make it much more suitable for a livable planet. So we had a question here, which you probably all saw, which is, can we make our economic system sustainable? Now, I've got 15 minutes to tell you what my answer is and why. And I'm going to do that very simply by showing you a few of what all economists, because there's different types of economists. There is conventional mainstream economists, and then there's heterodox or political economists. So we're both economists, but we see things completely differently, which you'll see in these next few slides. Okay, so this is a classical neoclassical economic framework. Would you agree with that? Yes. So you see the economy, you see the environment, and you see society completely separately. Okay. Now, what's really important is that there's nothing restricting that apart from the size of the screen. Okay, so if I had this on a bigger screen, you would see the economy growing, you would see the environmental problems or solutions growing, and you would see society growing. So nothing constraining it. That's the classical view of our economy. Now, probably from about 1980s, that was changed a little bit, and this is the one that you've already seen, which is we brought the three of them together, and we said, actually, if we all think about sustainability, if we have an economy and an environment and a society that thinks about sustainability, then there's beautiful little sweet spot in the middle of this that we can start working towards. And I actually really like the definition that you put up from 1987, I think, the Brandel, and it says we need to think about the needs of our needs and future needs. And I think that's great. This is why we're different types of economists, because it's not talking about wants. It's talking about fundamental things like needs. And of course, we know what those are. You know, we need a livable planet. We need an ecosystem that supports our health. Okay, so a classical conventional economist might say, but this is all really hazy. It certainly is when you're talking about, do you want a chocolate bar, right? Or do you want a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? But it's not when we're talking about the fundamental needs. So this definition of sustainability, considering it's 40 years old, it's actually done not too bad. So I quite like that. So this was in response to that definition. But society and our economy just completely ignored this idea of sustainability. And it was kind of like a moral nudge to say the economists, you know, we need to think about sustainability. And they said, well, we are thinking about sustainability. Look, it's right in the middle. But you need to ask yourself what fundamentally changed between that view where you saw them separate and this view where you see them together. And I would strongly argue that not only have things didn't get better, they got significantly worse. And I'll get into a wee bit of that during the Q&A, but I think it's really important you see this overall framework for how different economists and different types of schools of economics view our economic framework and our economic system. Okay. This is how a heterodox economist, so a non-conventional economist, would look at our framework for our economy. And they would say, the economy is in the middle of it. It's part of society. Every single thing that we do in our economy is socially structured. Price is socially structured. There's no such thing as supply and demand that's neutral and affected. All prices are socially conditioned and structured. Everything we do in our economy, every bit of regulation is socially constructed. So if we want an economy that looks completely different, guess who it is that comes up with that? It's us. So it's completely achievable. We can completely change our economic system because we have before, and we must do that if we want to have a survivable ecosystem and support of our species. So economy sits within society, but what surrounds our economy and our society is our ecosystem. And this is a fundamental difference, a huge difference from that first slide, because it says at some point the economy must stop growing because you cannot grow when there's something constraining the economy. Now, most, I was going to say all, but most conventional neoclassical economists think that the economy will grow forever. Actually, they want it to grow forever, and they say it will grow forever. Now, if you take, as I said, I trained for a year as a scientist, so I look at this and I think, where is the evidence that any socially constructed system can expand forever? There's no evidence. And if you look at the natural world, there's no evidence either. So this exists in the kind of brain, the big brain of a lot of conventional economists. And even now, after all of the ecological problems that we can see and we can feel every single day, the classical view is that this economy can still grow forever. And for me, I can say that's the theory of a death wish. And we need to have a system that realizes what our limits are, and we have to work towards it. So the conventional system that we have got doesn't take this view at all. This is a heterodox, this is a different view of the economy. So I want to break this down just a little bit. And heterodox is a kind of broad name for a lot of schools that sit outside this neoclassical definition of economics. So within that, you would have Marxism, you would have modern monetary theory, post-Keynesianism, ecological economics, maybe even degrowth, feminism. All of these schools that sit outside the kind of conventional wisdom was that previous one. This is how an ecological economist would see our society. So very briefly, and this is what I'll finish on, you'll see on the left-hand side, this is the concept of an empty world. Up until about the 1950s, you looked at the world and you said, there's enough space for the economy to grow. But every single function of the economy starts with the creation or the use of natural resources. And then you put some human-made action into it, human-made capital, and out comes another form of matter. And it's the same with energy. Energy goes in, energy comes out. So this is how we're looking at the system. So you can see the difference. And I'd be very confident to say that this is the real world. This is how it works. You know, it's not an economic framework that's just I can prove by equations. This is what happens. There is a sun where all of our energy comes from. It hits the earth and some of it disappears. Where is that reflected in your conventional understanding of our economy and how it affects things? So you'll see it's on the left-hand side, and there's little things here, you don't need to go into too much detail, but that's the concept that every single thing that has value is from a natural resource. And that fundamentally affects the sustainability when all of your value comes from natural resources, because at some point you can't keep using natural resources. You have to start building up the capacity again. And then on the right-hand side, you've got what's called a full world. And most ecological economists would say we moved to this in the early 1970s. In the early 1970s, this is when the Limits of Growth report came out, which is a huge, fundamentally important report that said, hey, there's these things that we need to scale back or the world's going to collapse in probably around about 100 years, which is what it said. And an ecological economist would say, we're pretty full now. And Herman Daly, who's one of the most famous ecological economists, says, we've moved to a point in the global north where we no longer have economic growth. We have uneconomic growth. And going back to the slide that you put about the Kuznets environmental curve, you know, the one that went up like that, and it said you can pollute, till the cows come home, because at some point it's going to come down the other side. Well, what Herman Daly said, we're at that point now where we've damaged our sinks so badly and we've put so much pollution into the environment that we can't come back down. A sink does not work like that because of the environmental degradation. So that's a nice chart. Right? Kuznets was great for the really simple things. It's a nice chart, but there's absolutely no evidence that is what happens in society. And the professor mentioned what's happened in China. And I'll finish on that. China, it looks like it's got to the point where its emissions have come down. So it's starting to do it. But what's happened to its material consumption? Do you think they're coming down? It's still going up. What do you think about its level of biodiversity loss? Is that coming down? It's still going up. What about its deforestation? It's still going up. So what we tend to do, pardon?
It's not true then.
Well, okay, well, let me come back to that. Yeah. So you look at the impact of the economy and you can't focus on one thing, which is emissions. You have to look at all of the damage that happens to the ecosystem from economic growth. And that's what I'll finish with is we've got uneconomic growth and to answer the system, can we make our, and I changed that to our current economic system sustainable? And I've said no. We need to use a new economic framework to create a new economic system.